It starts the same way almost every night. You open your phone for 5 minutes just to check one notification, one message, one video. 45 minutes later, you're still scrolling. You've seen war, memes, beauty, disaster, jokes, and outrage, all mixed together. You close the screen, and for a second, everything feels flat. Not truly sad, not truly happy, just numb. It's easy to think this is a personal failure, a sign of weak willpower or bad habits. But what if it's also something else? What if the way today's platforms are designed is quietly rewiring how our brains respond to the world and changing how billions of people experience reality? For most of human history, information was scarce. News moved at the speed of horses, ships, and letters. You might hear about a war or a disaster weeks or months after it happened. Entertainment was limited to stories, music, theater, maybe a few books or newspapers. To access a new story or a new idea, you had to go somewhere. A library, a cinema, a public square. Today, for billions of people, the situation has reversed. We live in a world where information is abundant and attention is scarce. Short-form videos, infinite social feeds, streaming platforms, podcasts, almost all of it available instantly inside a device we carry everywhere. Our brains, however, did not evolve for this. They are still running on hardware tuned for survival in small groups, now exposed to a global fire hose of stories, emotions, and stimuli. Most of the platforms we use are free. We don't pay with money, we pay with attention. Advertising-based platforms make more money when we spend more time with them. Their core product is not just videos or posts, it's our sustained engagement. That's why so many services are built around infinite scrolling, autoplay, next video, notifications, personalized feeds powered by recommendation algorithms. Recommendation systems learn what keeps us watching, what makes us stop, swipe, click, replay, and then they show us more of it. They're not evil in a cartoon sense. They're optimized for metrics, watch time, daily active users, ad impressions. But in the process, they constantly search for stimuli that are slightly more surprising, slightly more emotional, slightly more extreme than what we just saw. Over millions of interactions, this creates feeds full of high-intensity content. Crisis after crisis, joke after joke, beauty after tragedy, all flattened into the same vertical scroll. To understand why this can make the world feel numb, we need one basic idea from neuroscience. When something rewarding or surprising happens, a funny clip, a like, a message, a shocking headline, your brain releases a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine is not just pleasure. It's about anticipation and learning this was interesting. Pay attention to this again. Now imagine encountering dozens or hundreds of these small hits in a short time. Scroll, funny video. Scroll, shocking news. Scroll, attractive image. Scroll, personal notification. Each one is a tiny signal. Stay here. Something new is coming. Over time, this can raise your baseline for stimulation. Normal life, a quiet walk, a slow conversation, a single long article can start to feel less engaging compared to the rapid-fire novelty of your feed. It's not that reality has become worse. It's that your internal measure of what counts as interesting has been recalibrated by systems that profit from constant novelty. The result isn't constant joy. Often, it's the opposite. A sense of emotional flatness when you're not plugged in, and a restless urge to check again. There is another cost to endless content: emotional overload. In a single scroll session, you might see a war zone in one country, a flood in another, a personal tragedy from someone you'll never meet, and then a comedy sketch right after. Our nervous systems weren't built to process this many distant crises and life stories in such a compressed format. Psychologists talk about compassion fatigue and psychic numbing. When repeated exposure to suffering, especially at a distance, makes us feel less able to care or act. Studies show that people often feel more moved by the story of one identifiable person than by statistics about thousands. As numbers grow, our emotional response can actually shrink. Now combine that with a feed that never ends, where every tragedy is quickly replaced by another, and then by something funny or trivial. To protect itself, the brain can start to flatten emotional responses, avoid fully engaging with any one story, or slide into a kind of defensive numbness. It's not that we become bad people, it's that the volume of global content exceeds the emotional bandwidth we have. This numbness doesn't just affect our private lives, it also shapes our sense of politics and power. In many countries, political campaigns now live inside the attention economy. Micro-targeted ads, viral clips of debates, outrage-based commentary, short videos designed to trigger fast reactions. The same dynamic applies. The more emotionally charged the content, the more likely it is to spread. Fear, anger, and moral shock travel faster than nuance. This can privilege fear over complexity, anger over careful discussion, simple certainty over honest uncertainty. At the same time, the sheer volume of political noise can be exhausting. Every day brings a new scandal, a new crisis, a new emergency headline. For some people, this leads to constant panic or outrage. For others, it leads to withdrawal, a belief that nothing can be understood or changed, and that the only sane response is to tune out. Numbness, in this context, becomes not just a personal feeling, but a political problem. When people talk about numbness and screens, the advice often sounds purely individual. Use your phone less. Have more discipline. Delete social media. Personal choices do matter, but they happen inside a designed environment. Platforms are engineered to reduce friction. Videos autoplay, new posts appear with a simple pull to refresh. Notifications are colored and timed to be hard to ignore. Many of these patterns borrow from behavioral research, similar ideas used in casinos, games, and supermarkets. This doesn't mean every designer is malicious, but it does mean the default settings of our digital world are not neutral. If a city were designed so that every street led to a casino, we wouldn't only talk about self-control. We would also talk about urban planning. In the same way, if we want less numbness and more intentional attention, we may need more than personal hacks. We may need better design, better defaults, and better rules. Around the world, there are small but growing efforts to push back. On a personal level, some people experiment with phone-free hours at home, moving the most distracting apps off the home screen, using focus modes or minimalist phones for part of the day. Some schools and families limit smartphone use for children and teenagers, worried about mental health, sleep, and concentration. On the policy side, a few countries and regions are exploring rules on design features that resemble addictive mechanisms, transparency requirements for recommendation algorithms, limits on targeted advertising to minors, stronger data protection and privacy laws. These steps are imperfect and often controversial, but they share a basic idea. If the environment shapes attention, then changing the environment can be part of the solution. We can't go back to a pre-digital world, but we can try to build a more humane digital one. If the world feels numb, it's not because nothing matters. It's because we're living inside systems that compete endlessly for our attention, pull our emotions in 100 directions per hour, and rarely give us time to fully process what we see. Endless content doesn't just entertain us. It trains our brains to expect more novelty, more intensity, more stimulus, until normal life feels strangely quiet. But numbness is not the end of the story. It can also be a signal, a sign that our emotional circuits are overloaded and that we may need to renegotiate our relationship with the machines in our pockets. On a personal level, that might mean choosing one long story over 100 short ones, or giving full attention to a single conversation without background noise. On a societal level, It might mean asking harder questions about how we design and regulate the platforms that now shape so much of our mental landscape. The world is not less meaningful than before, but meaning does not survive well in a constant storm of fragments. To feel fully again, we may need to do something radical in our age. Give our attention slowly and deliberately to fewer things and let them matter.